start.
Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome to today's recruitment webinar for the Office for Environmental Protection. The role we are looking at today is our environmental analyst, of which we have 2 roles available. I will just run through some housekeeping first. So my name is Jenny, I'm part of the HR team and I do all the recruitment. This session, as I said, is for a senior environmental analyst. The event has been set up as a Teams event so that participants can come along anonymously. The session is being recorded and it will be shared with candidates who are unable to attend today. It will also be put on the OEP website. Throughout the webinar, we have a Q&A, which is should be on your right-hand side of your screen. Please do put questions in and we'll answer as we go through at appropriate points. Again, they are anonymous unless you wish to put your name. So I'm just going to ask the panel now to introduce themselves. John, would you like to go first, please? Natalie?
Oh, I've done it again. Apologies. I was on mute again. Natalie, which is what you were just about to say. I'll try again. Apologies. My name's John Brand. I'm the HR manager for the OEP. I'm here running the slides and occasionally putting myself off mute. I'm also about to help answer the questions.
Oh, it's over to me. Thank you very much, John. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Natalie Prosser. I'm the Chief Executive here at the OEP.
Robbie?
Hi everybody, I'm Robbie MacDonald. I'm the Chief Scientist and the Chief Insights Officer at the OEP, and these jobs are in my directorate. And I'll hand over to Tim Adey, who's our Science and Evidence Manager. Tim.
Hi, and I'm Tim Adey. I'm Head of Science and Evidence here at the OEP.
Thank you very much. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? We're going to have an introduction from Natalie, who's going to tell us a little bit about what we're looking for and about the OEP. We're then going to move on to Robbie, who's going to talk about the role and the functions of the OEP and the Insights Directorate. And then we're going to hand over to Tim, who's going to tell us more about the roles that we've got advertised for the environmental analyst. And then we're going to come to myself and I'm going to give you some information about the application process, how to apply in the job adverts and some of the terms and conditions. One very important point, which I do want to emphasise, this webinar is not a substitute for the full job description, which should be read thoroughly before making an application. Okay, this is just to meet us, to provide some more information and to get a feel for the role. Please do read the job description in full before you submit an application. Okay, without further ado, I'll hand over to Natalie.
Thank you very much. Oh, yep. Can everybody hear me? That's good. Okay, I'll ignore it saying that you can't. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for coming along to hear more about this role and also a bit about us at the OEP. I'm just going to do a little bit of high level kind of setting of the scene about us at the OEP, and I'll hand over to my colleagues to talk in a little bit more depth about the OEP and the role itself. But I just wanted to reflect a couple of things. The OEP is still a really relatively new organisation. We were set up in 2021 and none of us have been here all that long compared with other organisations. And we have a very broad and fairly complex remit. Right at the heart of it is environmental protection and improvement. So take all of those things together, the fact that we're a relatively new organisation, the fact that our remit is really broad and that core and demanding mission to protect and improve the environment really affects how we organise ourselves and how we do our job. We're a dynamic organisation because we're small, we all know each other and we have to work together in multidisciplinary ways to really deliver on that mission. We have to work in a way that's innovative and we have to work in a way that's really flexible. And that's the kind of person that we're looking for to come and join us at the OEP. people who are enthused and excited about rolling their sleeves up and working on a really broad portfolio of different kinds of work, and that can flex around multiple different disciplines that we have at the OEP, whether that be science, research, investigations, complaint handling, lawyers, and many others. And we're looking for a really broad range of people. We have a very diverse workforce at the OEP already, but we know full well that we can't cover everything that we might, even with the people that we can employ. So we're really looking for people who can bring extra breadth to us. And really important to all of that is people who really believe in our mission, who really understand how important it is that we do protect, improve our environment, and want to play a really active part in delivering on that. Because we're a small organisation, there isn't any room for passengers. Everybody plays an important part, and everybody has the opportunity to make a really meaningful impact on the work that we do. So the fact that you're here is really, really encouraging. I hope that you find this useful. Please do put questions in, and I hope I've given you a bit of a flavour for us at the OEP. I personally, as all of my colleagues know, I want this to be the best place anyone has ever worked, because I believe that delivering on our mission requires us all to be able to be the best version of ourselves, because we have a difficult mission to deliver on. And we need people who want to join us and really get behind delivering it. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Professor Robbie MacDonald, who's going to talk a little bit more about the OEP and a little bit more about the Insights Directorate as well, where this role will sit. Robbie, over to you.
Thanks, Natalie. So yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit more about the specifics of this role and then where it sits within the organisation. So I'll just start with a little bit more in the way of background. As Natalie says, we're a relatively small organisation, but one that actually we really try to have an impact beyond our size. And we work in quite a specialised and niche area in providing oversight of all of government's activities in protecting and improving the natural environment. So that breadth is really remarkable. So that extends from everything to do with biodiversity conservation, which is more my kind of research and scientific background, through to improvement of air quality, water quality in our lakes, rivers and coasts, management of fisheries, enjoyment of the natural environment, mitigation of mine waters, land contamination, planning development. It's all in there. And we have to provide oversight of all public authorities. So that's not just central government, it's also local government, it's a number of public authorities like the Environment Agency, like the Coal Authority, like Natural England, are all subject to our oversight. So you can see with that kind of remit, it's a real challenge, and we know that many things in the environment are not going as in the way they ought to. So it's down to us really to make sure that government lives up to its promises. So to do that, we are independent of government, so we're separate from government and Crown departments, so we have no ministerial control. Our accounts are sort of managed through DEFRA and DERA in Northern Ireland, but we really strive to maintain and work independently of government in all its forms. As Natalie mentioned, we're quite a new organisation, so we were founded towards the end of 2021 and came out of the Environment Act 2021. And we are one of 4 new cornerstones of environmental governance in the UK that was set up by the Environment Act. So these are an environmental improvement plan, which is a 25-year plan, a plan for a whole generation that extends beyond political timelines and horizons towards improving the environment for everyone's benefit. That's the EIP, the Environmental Improvement Plan. Then we have statutory and legally binding targets. Some of those are actually embedded in the Environment Act itself, and others are established by regulations later. But those have real legally binding weight on the governments of England and Northern Ireland, and it's our job to make sure that those are fulfilled as targets. Then we have the Environmental Principles Policy Statement, which is binding on all of government to make sure that government pays attention to principles such as the polluter pays and the precautionary principle in improving and maintaining and protecting the environment. And then fourth is the OEP, the Office for Environmental Protection. So we were established with the job of making sure that all the other three things actually work. So this is a big ask, and this is the job that you'd be stepping into in this role. Just to clarify, one thing is that we operate in England and Northern Ireland on equal footing. So we work across both countries, and our staff are based in England and in Northern Ireland, and those staff work on either country according to their role and the project needs. So we don't have a kind of smaller Northern Ireland department and an English department. We all work together across the whole organisation. And there's another area of our remit, which is matters that are reserved to the whole of the UK, where decision making is at the UK government level, and that extends to some things like marine international commitments and the UK overseas territories, amongst others. Yeah, really just to emphasize that the overall point of the whole exercise is to make sure that the environment improves. So this is not a bureaucratic venture. You know, this is something where we are really trying to apply ourselves to greatest effect to make sure that government, which is often the one that controls all of the ways in which environment is managed, government does its bit and does its bit in line with environmental law. So that's the sort of a bit of a background about what the OEP is. I mean, it's worth saying, actually, before I talk about the insights, just to reflect a little bit personally, is that I have a university position as an academic and a researcher. I've been doing that for a long time, and I came across to the OEP on a temporary placement for about 6 months. And that's 2 years ago. So I'm sticking with it because I think this is a really good place to have an impact to benefit the environment. And that's been a big part of my decision making and that of all of our colleagues who really are here because they want to make a difference and make a difference for the environment. So just thinking a little bit more specifically about the where this role is located. This is in what we call the Insights Directorate, and I mentioned that I'm the director for that unit. Effectively, this is our evidence and analytical unit for the whole organisation. So in some respects, we are like the scientist, natural scientist, social scientist, expert advisors for the organisation. So when a problem comes up and people want to understand how a system works, then they can talk to us. We're in that respect something like a sort of internal consultancy, and we work on multidisciplinary projects as part of the kind of technical advice and support for a whole range of different areas of activity. Often where the dominant area of activity and way of working might be legal or regulatory, led by our in-house lawyers or regulatory specialists. So that's one aspect of the job, is making sure that the organisation understands the systems that it's working with across the entirety of the natural environment remit that we hold. Then we're also responsible for quite a number of jobs in our own right. So we are responsible for producing an annual account of how government is doing in fulfilling all of those commitments that it has made in law. So we provide an annual progress report on government's fulfilment of the Environmental Improvement Plan. And that's really the landmark piece of work, the annual contribution that the OEP makes to understanding the state of the environment and how government is doing in changing it. So these jobs will be part of the team that produce that work. So we then also lead on a number of areas of project activity for the organisation too. So within our directorate, we're leading a large body of work on marine conservation and marine science. And we're also doing a lot of work on nature conservation at the moment, the top priorities for the organisation. We're also working in the area of soils, for example, too. So there are things that where we take a technical lead for the organisation, where we're working on the detail and then working out how best to place the organisation to work in future and contribute in future. So it is genuinely an exciting job. We find that people taking these sorts of roles are going to be given diverse tasks. They're always going to feel very close to the application and the endpoint. You will never feel like you're a kind of a small cog in a big machine in a job like this. You're going to be close to the sharp end of it, and you're going to be using your analytical skills to great effect for environmental improvement. So I hope that that sounds appealing. That's still all quite big picture stuff, so I'm going to hand over to Tim Adey to tell you a little bit more about the specifics of these roles. Tim.
Thanks, Robbie. So I'm going to talk you through a bit more about kind of what these roles will be doing and kind of what we're looking for in them, really. So as Robbie said, kind of the insights is really the analytical heart of the organisation, and these roles are really looking to support us across our whole range of functions in the work that we do. So that includes kind of monitoring government's progress on improving the environment, both in England and Northern Ireland. It's about ensuring that we've got the right evidence and science and capability to be able to support that work. And it's also supporting our briefings and our advice to ministers and our other reports. So providing that kind of almost that consultancy aspect that Robbie mentioned. What this could involve is supporting across the kind of the full range of activities that we undertake within Insights. So as Robbie said, every year we publish a report on the government's progress in delivering its EIP and the environmental targets it's committed to, and that makes a number of recommendations, and these roles will almost certainly be involved in supporting that work. It is our kind of one of our key components. In Northern Ireland, we're also publish a report to independently assess Northern Ireland Executive's Environmental Improvement Plan when that's in place, and again, these roles will be supporting that kind of work. Could we get the next slide, please, John? Thanks. Alongside that kind of reporting on government's progress, we also provide and publish advice to government on their EIP and their goals and targets as they're adopted and revised. So that's our kind of advice function, and these roles will potentially play a role in supporting that. We have a role in evaluating and reporting on the government's approach to its test of whether it's made a significant improvement to the natural environment, and again these roles will support on that. And as Robbie mentioned, we take a kind of issues-based approach and prioritise our activity to a number of areas, and this role will kind of help us to scrutinise that work. And this year we're looking at nature, water, environmental governance, and we're also developing our work on waste, chemicals, the marine environment and soils. And we're developing and delivering a research program to support that work. That's looking to kind of identify where those gaps are in the evidence, what the policy and delivery is needed to support those. And again, depending on kind of the candidates, there's absolutely an opportunity and a kind of a role for people to get involved in that work. And finally, the kind of area across all of our work is about delivering that kind of insights into how we achieve as a nation kind of sustained environmental improvement across the marine, terrestrial, freshwater and air environment. So really, these roles contribute to the whole breadth of our work. Have the next slide, please, John. So what are we looking for in order to support that? Well, the key thing is to start off with is we're looking for people with a degree level education or equivalent experience, and I think that's the key thing. If you've got the kind of equivalent experience, the degree in that kind of environmental, by that we mean not just kind of natural but also the kind of broader social and kind of economic sciences, then absolutely that's what we're also looking for. It's really vital, given what you've heard about the kind of broad range of tasks and areas we cover, that the right candidate will be able to think and operate strategically, ensuring that our work reflects that broader kind of political, economic, social landscape. We're looking for people who are able to kind of use sound judgment and critical thinking to really tackle some of these complex issues. We're looking for people with that kind of analytical background, that experience in how you collect, analyse and present data, and how you then communicate that to people and kind of get that message across. Experience of working collaboratively is really key here. Robbie's described the organisation and how we sit in Insights, but we're very much an organisation that works across teams in a multidisciplinary function. So you will be working across the whole range of people in the organisation. So really being a strong team player and having those excellent organisational skills is really vital to be able to manage your workload and manage work across the whole breadth of people we've got. That's my kind of summary of what we're looking for and what these roles will entail. I think I'm handing back to you, aren't I, Jenny?
Yep, sorry, I couldn't find the right button. Yeah, you are, no problem. Thank you very much, Tim. We've actually got a question that's come in, and Robbie, I was wondering if you would mind answering that one. But is there a reason England and NI are linked, and are the separate bodies for Scotland and Wales, or are they linked too?
Sure, this is a good question, because as you will appreciate, environmental policy and law is a devolved matter. So each of the 4 nations of the United Kingdom decide on their environmental business themselves. So it's something of a quirk, actually, that England has the OEP, and the OEP also works in Northern Ireland, but there are in fact separate organisations in Scotland. There's Environmental Standards Scotland. And in Wales, they haven't quite got to a permanent position yet in Wales. There's an interim environmental protection assessor for Wales. So the 4 countries are represented by 3 bodies. And we actually, by coincidence, we had a meeting of the 3 bodies for the 4 countries just last week in Cardiff. So we meet regularly with them and compare notes on what they're doing and what we're doing. And there are examples of projects which we undertake in parallel with them, where we plan the activities and separate out our activities. For example, in relation to special protection areas for birds, we're also coordinating some of our knowledge gathering in relation to fisheries as well. So yeah, it's a quirk of devolution, but we are as firmly established in Northern Ireland as we are in England for this job.
Thank you, Robbie. I'm just going to take the opportunity to say, if you do have questions, do ask them, pop them in the Q&A. We have Tim and Robbie here who can, well, as captive audiences, who can answer your questions for you. So do pop those in. In the meantime, we'll carry on and have a little look at the how to apply section. Okay, for these roles, you've been asked to complete a CV which details your work history and your qualifications, and a 500-word statement of suitability on how you meet the essential criteria outlined in the person specification. In addition, there is also one behaviour statement which we would like completing on the lead behaviour, which is seeing the big picture. Once you've submitted your application form, your application will be marked, and if you're successful, you will be invited to interview, where you'll be assessed on experience, behaviours and technical elements outlined in the job advert. If a presentation or additional exercise is required, you'll be given plenty of notice so that you can complete that interview. Interviews will be held for these roles in both Worcester and Northern Ireland in our touchdown office in Belfast. And unfortunately, just to mention, we can't provide feedback to candidates following interview results. Okay, next slide. So terms of employment, as I've said, interviews are taking place in Worcester in Northern Ireland. This is where these roles are advertised. So if you are GB based, you'll be contractually based at the Worcester office. We embrace a blended working model supporting a combination of office and home working, which is dependent on both business needs and individual circumstances. I won't read out all the wording because it is in the job advert, so do have a really good read of it. But current expectations are 40% of your time in the office. And if you're in Northern Ireland, you'll be contractually home-based. We don't have an office in Northern Ireland. We have a touchdown space, which is quite well used by all of our Northern Ireland colleagues who attend that office. Okay. And just as a note, if the candidate's an internal candidate, you're applying for the role at the advertised locations and tube restrictions may apply. Okay, salary-wise, this is an HEO, so a higher executive officer role, and the starting salary is 31,863. We have a very generous civil service defined benefit pension, which gives you between roughly 2.9% employer contribution rate. It depends on your grade, so it fluctuates differently for different grades, but it's very generous. And then 25 days annual leave, rising to 30 after 5 years. I would say do have a really good read of the job description, because a full list of all the benefits of working for the OEP can be found in the advert. There are quite a lot of them, and we can't go through them all now, but it's definitely very generous. So do have a really good read. Okay, next slide. It's about reasonable adjustments. So the OEP are a disability confident employer, and we believe in creating equal opportunity for all and welcome all applications for all the roles we advertise. So the Disability Confidence Scheme, we want to encourage disabled people to apply for jobs and give them an opportunity to share their skills, talents and abilities. So when completing your application form, it will ask you if you wish to apply under the DCS scheme. Please read the criteria, and if you feel you meet it, please do apply under the DCS scheme. What it does is it gives you, if you meet the minimum requirements for the fifth, you get put through to interview. So if you do meet that criteria, please do apply under it. We'd love to see your applications. And anybody may request a reasonable adjustment if they feel they need one, because we wish to support people at any point in the recruitment process, even if you don't qualify for the DCS scheme. We do consider all visible and non-visible disabilities, neurodiversities, learning differences, chronic medical conditions, mental ill health. So some of the examples that we would support are dyslexia, epilepsy, autism, chronic fatigue, diabetes or schizophrenia. And we've offered a huge range of reasonable adjustments in the past. So again, if you need a reasonable adjustment at application or interview, please do let us know and we'll contact you with regards to moving that forward. Okay, thank you very much, John. Let's have the next slide. Application tips. Personal statement. Okay. Focus on the essential skills and experience criteria, which is outlined in the person specification in the advert. That is what it's going to be assessed against, because that's what we're looking for. So within your statement, provide examples, actual working examples where you have done something before. Don't just make claims. We want to actually see proper examples to show and demonstrate your experience. With regards to your behaviours, we're asking for a behaviour statement at application, and we're also going to assess your behaviours at interview. Really important, please read the Civil Service Success Profiles document. There is a link in the advert to it. Have a look at the behaviours we are assessing and have a look at the HEO grade. That will tell you what we're looking for each of these behaviour statements. It's really important because, again, that is how we're assessing your behaviour within that. In terms of modelling your answers, we recommend you use the STAR format, which is situation, task, action, result, to structure and model your responses. Within your statements, use I rather than we, because we want to know what you did, what your actions were. And as just a quick hint, do some Google research. There is a lot of information out there about behaviours, about competency-based interviews, about the success profiles, the STAR format. Do have a really good research, because you'll find everything you need to know and how to put your best foot forward through doing a bit of research. Okay, and can we just move to the next slide, please, John? Okay. The application deadline for these roles is the 1st of September 2024 at 23:55 in the evening, so just before midnight. We will commence the SIFT as soon as we can on the next day, and the interviews we anticipate will be late September, with offers expected at some point in October, but it really depends on how many application forms we have and how long the SIFT takes. So these are just indicative dates at this point. And may be subject to change. Okay, we have had a few questions come through, and actually we're now on the Q&A. So please do put your questions in. I'll encourage you. You've got an audience. Please do put questions in if you've got anything that you'd like to ask us. Right, let's have a little look what we've got. I come from an animal behaviour ecology educational background, but for the last 3 years I've been working in an antimicrobial resistance lab. I'm keen to move back into environmental science. What training support does the OEP offer? Also, in regards to the permanent position, can you disclose which placement this is, England or Northern Ireland? Thank you. Tim, Robbie? Who would like to answer? Yeah,
I can take
thank
that
you.
one.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a fairly broad question in relation to your academic background. This example here is about whether a move back into environmental science, having worked in an AMR lab, antimicrobial resistance lab, whether this is strength. Of course, any experience like that it represents a strength for us. Right? So actually, there is a part of our remit in relation to the specifics here, which relates to human health and environmental protection. So as it happens, an AMR background and understanding of that area would not be a weakness at all. Actually, it would be something of a strength. So I think Tim put it well. We are looking here for breadth. We're looking for people with a background in natural science or social science or other related environmental evidence and analytical fields. So look at this in the round, look at it broadly. If you're working in the environment in an analytical function in some way, then you're the right sort of person. So do put your best foot forward. Your question is about the move back into environmental. So I wouldn't say that you'd left. If you're working in an AMR lab, you're already still in it. But the same point remains, actually, that if you're working in this broad field, or even if you've moved out for a period of time, but have a track record that allows us to see your skills and aptitudes, then go for it, put the application in. You then ask a second question about training and support. Well, I mean, in that specific instance, I don't think you would need training and support to be able to undertake these roles. Actually, you'd already be well placed. But the OEP does have a good programme of learning and development. We're also pretty flexible within the Insights Directorate too for some further specialist training and attendance at conferences and so on, and development of our team as analytical professionals in a very broad area. So you'd be well supported in developing your career as a science and analytical professional. Then in relation to your questions about the location of the permanent position. So in this instance, we've got a permanent role, and then we have at least one, possibly more short-term roles. And the location of those, we don't distinguish between them. So if you're in Northern Ireland, you want to carry on working in Northern Ireland. If you're in England or Scotland or Wales and you want to carry on living and working in GB, that's fine. The permanent position is location agnostic, so don't let that worry you. The second question is also quite a sophisticated one. This is to do with the role of being affected by events such as the Northern Ireland executive being unable to form a government or collapsing. Well, of course, actually, that's been the situation that we've been in for most of the OEP's existence in Northern Ireland, is to not have a functioning executive. So we're very pleased that there is now one and that environmental issues are being debated. So in terms of the content of the role, we have been doing a lot of work with officials. We've also been doing a lot of analytical work, and we've been providing advice in the background when ministers haven't been in place, so that when they return, they get the benefit of that advice when they do. We have also, where possible, initiated investigations and actually proceedings too. So where we've been confident that we can achieve an environmental outcome in Northern Ireland in the absence of ministers, we have continued to take action. But it's a different story now. There is a new minister in place who is showing every sign of taking these issues seriously. And so we're looking forward to working with an active executive amidst all of the many challenges that there are in Northern Ireland. We want to make sure that the environment doesn't lose ground any more than it already has. Then we have another broad question, which is to do with recent graduates or whether we need to have experience in a relevant working role before. Well, the way these jobs are specified, do take a close look at the essential criteria. We are looking for good training background, and then experiences to draw on. It may well be that you have the sufficient experience in a short career for these roles, so you have to reflect on what you have got under your belt, what you can describe effectively in relation to the behaviours and competencies that we describe in the job description. And again, as we've all said, put your best foot forward. So I think sometimes people tend to rule themselves out of jobs if they don't see an absolute mirror image in the description. Don't do that. If you think that you can do this, if you think that you've got something to offer, then you've got nothing to lose by putting yourself forward. So I'd encourage even recent graduates, particularly those who've taken proactive roles in their communities to undertake environmental work, then go for it. This is probably a more procedural question for either John or Jenny.
Yeah, so the next question is, if the application is name blind, should examples be given in personal statement, also have identifying elements removed? Okay, so this is a difficult one. Yes, it is an anonymous CV, but at the same time, you still need to sell yourself for this role. So I would say don't directly put your name in it, but if you've done work that is relevant to this, that you need to talk about in order to sell yourself for this role, then do put it in, but just don't put your name against it. You can make it as anonymous as you can within the realms of how can I put my best foot forward. Don't overanalyze it too much, but we're not going to go and look you up. We are going to read what's on that statement, and we're going to look at that, and if you've sold yourself for that role, that you'll be put forward to interview, but just don't go and mention your name as such. I hope that answers the question. It's a difficult one to answer. You need to assess yourself when you're writing it. Is this going to be too identifying or not? But you need to bear in mind you do have to sell yourself for this role as well. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add anything to that, but hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. Thanks, Jenny.
Okay, we've got no more questions in. So I'm just going to go over the closing date again. If we could move to the last slide, please, John. Which should say, application deadline, Sunday, the 1st of September at 23:55. If when you come off this webinar, you suddenly think, oh gosh, I've got more questions, please email recruitment@theoep.org.uk and we'll get back to you as soon as we can and answer your questions. Do ask away, because if you want to put your best foot forward for the role and find out more information, do ask. We'll get back to you. Okay, I think, no one else has any more questions or anything to add, or we'll come to an end, and we'll say thank you very much for attending today's webinar. We hope that you found it useful. It will be accessible on the OEP website within sort of 24 hours. If you need to listen back, please go and find it. But thank you very much for taking the time, coming along today and meeting us. It's much appreciated. And good luck with your application.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.